my question to you is, who has accompanied you so far in your journey? Who has walked with you for you to be here right now in this moment of your life? In my case, obviously my brother accompanied me in many years of my young adulthood. I had an extended young adulthood. My sister and brother-in-law accompanied me in my discernment of my vocation. And obviously several priests and religious sisters have been next to me as well. But the reality is that most of our young adults don't have that luxury to have that network that we have. And so, one of the things I will be going over today is obviously Evangelii Gaudium, and the documents have been written in the preparation to the Synod. And my favorite part of Evangelii Gaudium, there are many, but it is this one, and it really touched my heart during the USCCB convocation last summer. It's just the simple formula to be a missionary disciple, and it is the person-to-person evangelization. So the first step is listen. No wonder why the Holy Spirit, through Pope Francis, is making us listen to the young adults and the youth in our world. He knew it, that by making these listening sessions, he will make more work for bishops, he will make more work for us, and at the end, we will all listen to the needs of our young adults. After we listen to them, what do? We share our own story, our personal story. That has touched deeply my ministry, because I come from 10 years of being a DRE, of being the teacher, of sitting down my students, to being a young adult minister, in which I have to share my story to others. And it's worked. This little formula of listen, share, and pray has worked so far, and it has changed my ministry. So, transitions. During the survey that we did in our diocese, for the preparation of the upcoming synod, there were some sentences that kept repeating themselves. And the sentences were, after high school, there is nothing for me in the church. Another sentence that kept coming up is, I am not looking for a program. I'm looking for a small group of friends of authentic relationships. And they just kept coming and coming when we were reading these surveys. The reality is that the young adults are going through so many transitions in their life, and we're not there serving them yet, or we're attempting to serve them. I'm just gonna mention a couple of them because I love statistics. Those going from high school to college. Do you know 60% of the high school graduates do not go to college? 60%. And just as we're putting resources on campus ministry, we also have to put resources in our parish ministry to serve that 60% that doesn't have the fortune to go to college. Another one, 40% of our Catholic married couples end up in divorce. So we see a lot of our divorced young adults around. Next one, young adults from other cultures or immigrants. I guess it's not a surprise for you that 55% of those 30 years old and below in the United States are Hispanic. 55%, and the fastest growing communities are among the African, Asian, Caribbean, Hispanic in our country of youth and young adults. And yet, they're also leaving the church. We're not just the low-hanging fruit that we filled up a lot of parishes, but 25% of them are already nuns of the adult Hispanics in United States. 25% already claim themselves as non-religiously affiliated. Next statistic. Addictions. Pornography is taking over our world. Addictions is the new epidemic of our culture. And also many times we hear of the leading cause of death among youth and young adults is suicide as well. There's a lot of things going on. Finally, single parents. I just heard this statistic last month. 42% of our Latino children are being raised by one parent only. That one's a new one for me. Anyway, there is many other transitions. Those engaged couples, how are we accompanying our single young adults who are not even thinking of getting engaged yet, who are not even there in the dating process yet? Newly married couples, career transitions, losing their job, changing careers, geographical transitions, moving to a new city, moving to a new town, moving to a new district, a new country, the college to parish transition. The young professionals. I mean, you just go on and on and on talking about these transitions and how are we currently serving the young adults, how are we accompanying them during these transitions. So I remember in a webinar, Robert Feducia was talking about this conveyor belt, like in the airport, you know, the belt that moves. Wouldn't it be wonderful in our ministries in Catholic Church, instead of having fragmented ministries, we will all go together. And before we end one, there is another ministry ready for you to be welcome. So before one graduates from high school, there is a young adult ministry waiting for you. Oh, but you didn't go to college, so we have another one here waiting for you in your parish. Everywhere you turn around, we already have a ministry waiting for the next transition in life. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Anyway, so a little formula I've been following, and this formula works for integrating culturally different groups in a parish, but it also works wonderfully for any young adult ministry. It is the 3 steps of welcoming, belonging, and ownership. In this accompaniment, how are we welcoming our young adults in our ministries? Are we truly welcoming them in those moments of return to our parish? It touches my heart to see and receive emails from large ministries like Knights of Columbus, CRS, Marino, and I won't mention the rest, that are actually allocating resources to have a young adult director reaching out for young adults in those ministries. I think they're a model to follow in our nation. How are we teaching our pastors, our seminarians, to welcome their young adults at different stages and different transitions in their life right now? And I have to say, I visit a lot of deaneries as part of my job, and I present them this slide, and I ask the question, before we even talk about how a young adult can belong in your parish, let's talk about how you're welcoming them. And very few have ideas about how to welcome a young adult. So, next, documents. So the preparatory document for the Synod has a wonderful section allocated for accompaniment. And in that section, it describes how Jesus is our model to accompany others. It describes some qualities of the ideal profile of a person accompanying a young person in vocational discernment. So these are the qualities. I'm going to go over them. And that is something that we can reflect upon and say, which quality am I lacking to be a better companion to the young adults? Do we have a loving look like Jesus did when he was choosing his disciples? Do we have an authoritative word like Jesus was teaching in the synagogue? Do we have the ability to become the neighbor like the parable of the Good Samaritan? And not walk ahead or walk behind our young adults, but walk with them at their pace. Are we being authentic witnesses, fearlessly going against preconceived ideas, like the washing of the feet at the Last Supper? How many times Pope Francis wrote in Evangelii Gaudium, we need to get rid of the we have always done it this way. We have to get rid of preconceived frameworks. Are we ready to stand up with a brave new initiative and see if it works? If not, it's okay. And last one, the choice to walk beside my neighbor, which is the Road of Emmaus, which we already reflected upon yesterday. And in that Road of Emmaus, if you think about Jesus, what he was doing with the disciples that were all stressed and with anxiety, what was Jesus doing? He was listening. First step. We need to, and Pope Francis, this is a quote from him. He said, there is a ministry that today is needed among priests and lay people. And that ministry is the ministry of listening. So as companions, we need to listen a whole lot more to our young adults that we're serving them. The second step that Jesus did when he was walking in Emmaus was he silenced the disciples so that they could hear his voice. He called them, "Oh, foolish men," and he silenced them. And after that, he started catechizing them and started telling them, but the scriptures said this. And at the end, he fills them with the Holy Spirit to go on. But his first step was to listen. So accompanying a young people requires going beyond a preconceived framework, encountering young people where they are, adapting to their times and pace of life, and taking them seriously. Now let's hear what the young adults said 2 months ago in Rome. They also have a whole section in accompaniment. What the young adults said matches pretty much what we just said previously, but I want to share it with you anyway. And what they said is, we don't need models of faith to imitate, but instead, living testimonies to witness. Such person should evangelize by their life. And they also went ahead and gave us a list of qualities that they're looking for in a mentor. Their qualities include to be a faithful Christian who engages with the church and the world, who constantly seeks holiness, who's confident without judgment, actively listens to the needs of young people and responds in kind, deeply loving and self-aware, acknowledges their limits and knows the joys and sorrows of their spiritual journey, and acknowledgement of their humanity, that they also make mistakes. They said mentors should not lead young people as passive followers, but walk alongside them, allowing them to be active participants in their journey. So now is when we turn the conversation back to you. I'm done. Almost there. What are our best practices on accompanying young adults right now? What are the best practices? 2 years ago in San Jose, we're talking about this, and there were a lot of concerns. They were saying, but how could a diocesan director accompany 5,000 young adults in the diocese? And there was a lot of questions for those who were in San Jose. We had this conversation already. And I hope in the last 2 years we already kind of tried something, and we want to share it today. But some of the best practices in my diocese is, I'll start from the fourth one, PASCON, Pastoral Juvenil, and Mirna is sitting somewhere here. But Mirna has this group, about 20 young adult leaders, and they're already missionary disciples, they're already ready to evangelize, and their job is easy. Their job is not to run retreats, not to run conferences, but their job is to accompany young adults where they are. Accompany them in opening new young adult groups, accompanying them in funerals, accompanying them prayer time. They're full-time companions. And I've seen that giving a lot of fruits. Going back to number one, we're looking at programs that we have currently in our diocese, and we see the huge need of having mentors or spiritual directors to different things, and implementing our programs with those. So from practicing Catholics to Apostles in Mission will start this September in English and Spanish. And yes, our classes will be huge. Each of them will be about 75 people sitting in each class. And we are going to provide them a mentor to each of them, which is a huge endeavor. But we want them to have a mentor to help them walk through the program, and not just to be one more program in their life, but to make a difference. One more Carers retreat. They require a full-time spiritual director there. By grace, we have had about 10 spiritual directors in our Carers retreats. So at the end of the day, every young adult, if they didn't have a spiritual director already, they live with a spiritual director. And I've seen wonderful things happening after the retreat thanks to that accompaniment. Anyway, another example that was working wonderfully last year was Discovering Love with Clarity. Was a series of sessions that were not about theology of the body, but it was simply talking to single young adults to see if they were called to marriage, even way before they have a boyfriend, girlfriend. And that was attracted hundreds of young adults. They just kept coming and bringing their neighbors. And why? Because in each table we assign a mentor, a companion that will keep up with them the whole month before the next month arrives. So I just seen these existing programs that we have, and hopefully new programs coming up, or methodologies or format, in which once we insert the companion component to it, everything changes. So finally, who will walk with us? Mary. That's a beautiful picture because I took it in the Basilica of Guadalupe. And I was staring at there, waiting for the Pope, literally 20 hours. And I just kept staring. I knew Virgin was inside, the Virgin Guadalupe was inside, but outside, on top of the door, is this sentence. It just really got engraved in my heart by looking at it 20 hours. Let your heart not be troubled. Am I not here who am your mother? So Mary is truly the star of evangelization. And if you look at her life, she also had qualities of a great companion. She was tender, she will contemplate, and she had a great concern for others. So there is no doubt that she will walk with us in this journey of accompanying young adults. Thank you very much. So now we're going to continue the conversation on the table. As Jonathan said, we're supposed to be sitting among diocesan directors, parish ministers, and any other ministry. And the questions are, what do you already see happening in your ministry on accompaniment or forming communities? 2, how may we accompany young adults to become missionary disciples? 3, share your best practices around this topic. And 4, what else do we need in our journey to equip ourselves to be better companions? So